Howdy, folks, and welcome to day 34 of the Boat and RV 100 series. I am Joe Downs with Storage Moguls, and today I'm building the retention operating system with you, the specific habits, processes, and standards that keep your spaces full year after year without you having to constantly source new tenants to replace the ones you lost. Here's what retention actually looks like for the operators who get it right. They don't think about it as a campaign, they think about it as a standard. Every interaction, every resolved issue, every proactive call to a tenant who might be at risk, these aren't retention tactics. They're the operating standard, and that standard is completely buildable by anyone willing to commit to it. You've made it to day 34, you understand the market, you know how to find and evaluate deals, you understand financing, and you know how to take over a facility without losing tenants. So the retention framework you built today is what turns that foundation into a performing asset that compounds value year after year. And you have everything you need to build something real. And StorageMoguls.ai is where you put the pieces together with people doing the same work in the field. Remember, a mogul isn't just someone who owns a storage facility. A mogul is a sophisticated operator of real estate, someone who understands the full arc: sourcing, evaluating, underwriting, due diligence, closing, and operations. That's the standard we hold ourselves to, and that's what we're here to teach. We don't just buy storage, we acquire and we optimize it. That distinction might sound small, but it tends to show up in the tens of thousands of dollars per deal when you get it right. And we're made up of real people, couplepreneurs, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs who are actively in it and doing it. And nobody here graduated to a stage and stopped doing the work. We're evaluating real deals right now. Acquisitions between $400,000 and $2 million that are financeable and digestible, and we'll walk you through how. Members in our community are becoming storage moguls, not someday, right now. If you want to be a part of that, StorageMoguls.ai is where we are. It's free to start. You can move along at your own pace. But for now, let's get into today's episode. So we built the retention cost table on day 18, and today, day 34, is where we're going to build the system that produces those numbers in practice. The math hasn't changed. Losing one tenant costs anywhere from $375 to $750 or more, depending on when it happens and how long the space is vacant. Keeping one tenant for a year costs under $100 in time and some minor gestures. The return on retention investment is 4 to 7 times conservatively. At 100 spaces, this math is not a soft consideration. It's the primary financial lever. A 5% improvement in annual retention, that's 5 tenants who stay that otherwise would have left, is worth $1,875 to $3,750 in avoiding vacancy costs, plus the compounding effect of those tenants' referrals. There are tenure bonuses to occupancy stability and the NOI they represent at refinance or sale. The retention operating system we're building today is the mechanism that produces that 5% improvement consistently year after year without requiring a major operational investment. So here's the 4 components. If you build all 4 into operating rhythm and retention, it becomes a predictable output, not a hope. First, the one-call resolution. The most important service standard in this vertical. When a tenant calls with a problem, a gate code that's not working, a billing question, a concern about a space condition, they need to hang up with the problem solved. Not, I'll look into it, not, I'll call you back tomorrow, solved. This standard requires an operator who is empowered to act and reachable when tenants need them. Second, proactive annual outreach. Call every tenant once per year with no agenda other than checking in. Something like, hey, just wanted to reach out. How was your season this year? Is there anything we can do better? Most tenants will tell you something useful. All of them will feel valued. This call takes 5 to 10 minutes per tenant. For a 100-space facility, that's 8 to 16 hours per year, an investment that returns multiples. Third, at-risk tenant monitoring. Maintain a list of tenants showing risk signals, something like no access in 60 or more days, recent complaint that may not have been fully resolved, month-to-month lease with no renewal conversation, rate increase implemented in the last 60 days. Review this list monthly and make proactive content with each at-risk tenant. And fourth, tenure recognition. A tenant who's stored with you for 3 years, they should get a note. A tenant who reaches 5 years, they should get a personal phone call. These gestures cost almost nothing and signal something important, that loyalty is recognized and valued at your facility. Tenants who feel valued don't shop competitors. One call resolution sounds simple, but in practice, most facilities fail it. Not from bad intentions, but from the structural gaps in the operating setup. Here's what it requires: got to be reachable 7 days a week. Boat and RV tenants access their vehicles on weekends, early mornings, and evenings. A gate that won't open at 6 a.m. on a Saturday is a retention event. If no one is reachable to solve it, the tenant's confidence in the facility drops measurably. Publish your availability and live by it. Having the authority to act. If the manager on the phone needs to call the owner before they can waive a late fee, process a rate adjustment, or authorize a repair, the one call standard, whoever answers the phone needs to be empowered to resolve the most common tenant issues without escalation. Having knowledge of the systems. The operator who can't troubleshoot a gate access problem over the phone because they don't know the gate system well enough is a one-call resolution failure. Know your facility's technology. Know your billing software. Know the physical layout well enough to solve problems remotely. Publish your response times. Tenants who don't know when to expect a call back live or live in uncertainty because between the call and the return. Uncertainty is a retention risk. Publish your response time commitment. 4 hours is achievable and credible. You got to hit it. And I try to do it sooner than 4. Follow-up confirmation. After a problem is resolved, send a brief text or make a call to confirm. Just something like just following up to make sure the gate is working for you now. That closes the loop and signals genuine care. Most operators skip this. The ones who do it consistently build the deepest tenant relationships. The at-risk tenant process is the proactive half of retention. One call resolution handles the tenants who reach out. The at-risk process finds the tenants who are considering leaving without saying anything. Look for the following situations: no facility access in 60 or more days. This is the most reliable leading indicator of churn risk. A tenant who hasn't been to the facility in 2 months is either no longer using their vehicle or is considering their storage options. A call framed as a check-in, not a collections call, often surfaces a concern that can be addressed before it becomes a move-out. Recent unresolved complaint, a complaint that was technically resolved but left the tenant feeling unsatisfied, that's a churn risk that the data won't show. Follow up within 48 hours of any complaint resolution to confirm the tenant is satisfied. Something like, "I wanted to make sure that was resolved to your satisfaction," is a one-sentence retention investment. Month-to-month lease with no renewal conversation. Well, a tenant approaching the end of a lease term who hasn't heard from you is making their renewal decision in a vacuum. Get into the conversation with them. Ask what would make them want to renew. Sometimes the answer is nothing. They're leaving regardless. But often, it's a small thing you could have addressed. Vehicle sold or changed. This is the hardest risk signal to catch. But it's worth asking about in annual outreach calls. Did you get a new vehicle this year? A tenant who sold their 30-foot boat and bought a 40-foot one needs a larger space. If you have one, the conversation should retain them. If you don't, you've learned something useful about your space mix. Long tenure tenants are worth far more than their monthly rent. Understanding the full value picture changes how you treat them. Monthly revenue continuity is huge. No vacancy gap, no releasing process, no onboarding time. Every month a long tenure tenant stays is a month of pure revenue with zero acquisition costs. The cost of acquiring a new tenant, you got the vacancy period, marketing, manager time. That represents months of margin that the long tenure tenant never cost you. Referrals are also big. Boat and RV owners talk to each other at the marina, the campground, the dealer. A long tenure tenant who tells a fellow boat owner, "I've been at XYZ storage for 5 years, never had a problem." It's the most credible marketing available. That referral arrives pre-sold and with lower price sensitivity than a cold prospect. They also provide occupancy stability at refi. When you refinance at year 5 or 7, the lender reviews that rent roll. A roll with significant long tenure tenants signals a well-operated facility with genuine repeat demand. It supports your occupancy assumptions and strengthens your refinance package. They know the ropes. Long tenure tenants know the gate system, know the rules, know the rhythm of the facility. They generate almost no management overhead. The tenant who's been there 4 years never calls with questions that the first year tenant asks constantly. And their community anchors as well. In a 100 space facility, the tenants who have been there the longest are known quantities to other tenants. When they leave, especially visibly, it can create a signal that the facility is changing ways other tenants begin to notice and evaluate. So protect the anchors. Folks, retention is a culture built through consistent habits, not periodic campaigns. Here's the cadence that produces 90+% long-term occupancy. Here are your time-based habits. On the daily, respond to every tenant contact within 4 hours. This is non-negotiable. A tenant calls at 3 p.m. on Friday and doesn't hear back until Monday morning, has already had a negative experience. 4-hour response, 7 days a week, is achievable and it's visible. Every week, walk the facility, check the gate system, test the air compressor, look at the lighting. Note anything that could be a tenant complaint before the tenant finds it. Proactive maintenance prevents the reactive conversations that test the tenant confidence. Once per month, review the at-risk tenant list. Pull the access log and identify anyone who hasn't accessed their space in 60 or more days. Make the proactive calls. This is 1 to 2 hours per month and consistently produces the highest return of any retention activity. Every quarter, market rate survey. 2 hours. Know where you stand competitively. Assess whether any space categories need attention. And then once per year, call every tenant. Log the 10-year milestones. Review year-over-year occupancy and retention rate. The annual review tells you whether the system is working and where to improve it. Retention is the compound interest of operations. Every tenant you keep is a tenant you don't have to source, qualify, onboard, and hope performs for you. The cost difference between 90% and 95% annual retention isn't just the 5 tenants. It's everything those 5 tenants would have cost you to replace and everything the 5 long tenure tenants who stayed would have generated in referrals and occupancy stability. So build the system. 4 components that address retention from every angle: responsive service, proactive relationship, early risk identification, and loyalty recognition. Work the cadence: daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. Cadence is the culture. The culture is what your tenants feel when they interact with your facility, and that feeling is what keeps them there. Always protect the anchors. Your long tenure tenants are not interchangeable with new ones. They're worth more across every value dimension, so invest in them proportionally. All right, next up, day 35, amenity management. What tenants actually pay a premium for, the investments that move your rent ceiling, and the ones that don't. Please like this video if the retention operating system, daily response, monthly at risk review, annual calls is something you can actually see yourself building into your routine. Subscribe so you don't miss day 35. Ring the bell. The amenity episode where we will answer the question operators ask constantly: what should I spend money on first? The answer is more specific than most people expect. And share this with your network. I've told you why on, I don't know, if you started with Storage 100 and now you're into BRV 100, Boat and RV 100, then I've told you about 100 times now. You will thank me later, you disbelievers, when you realize this isn't just for me. Remember, folks, retention is the operating standard that makes everything else in this vertical work. The market analysis, the deal evaluation, the financing, the closing, all of it compounds into your NOI pro forma modeled. Only the tenant base stays intact. Build the system, work the cadence. StorageMoguls.ai has the at-risk monitoring template, the annual outreach framework, and the community of operators who have built this and can tell you what actually works. It's free to join. I don't know why you don't. Start building. Section 4 is the operating playbook, rate strategy, retention, amenities, 3 episodes that together define what it means to operate a boat and RV facility like a professional. So join Storage Moguls, retain more, replace less, and build value. Tomorrow, reminder, amenities, what they pay for, what they expect, and where the premium is. See you then.